But I did want to share two stories that I think dovetail, that are about specifically voting, because that is one thing that Congress is going back and forth on. And this is a lot of what the filibuster talk hinges on, is the idea of voting restrictions that Republicans are pushing forward in many states, and then also just the voter access. They're trying to limit access as much as they can, put up as many barriers between voting as they can, purge voter rolls anytime they possible, and all of that stuff. And interestingly enough, Biden's administration is doing a little something about it without Congress. And this was alluded to. Attorney General Merrick Garland came out and gave this kind of big press conference a few weeks ago, saying, like, we are going to use the Justice Department to enforce the law, and we will be suing states that are violating people's civil rights. Here's the first lawsuit. Justice Department sues state of Georgia over new voting restrictions, right? So Justice Department officials announced a federal lawsuit Friday against Georgia over new statewide voting restrictions that federal authorities allege purposefully discriminate against Black Americans. The first major action by the Biden administration to confront what it describes as efforts by Republican-led jurisdictions to limit election turnout. The legal challenges takes aims at Georgia's Election Integrity Act, which was passed in March by the state legislature and signed into law by Governor Brian Kemp. The law imposes new limits on the use of absentee ballots, makes it a crime for outside groups to provide food and water to voters waiting at polling stations, and hands greater control over election administration to the legislature. So they're putting it in the hands of legislatures instead of counties. Also, in Georgia, where statistically people of color wait orders of magnitude longer than white Georgians to vote, you can't hand out water, you can't hand out food. Let's see. This is interesting. The 46-page court filing came as numerous GOP majority state governments have been seeking to impose new voting restrictions in the wake of President Biden's victory over Donald Trump. Trump has spent months waging a baseless effort to discredit the result, making false and unsubstantiated claims, and specifically in Georgia asked the Georgia Secretary of State to, quote, find votes, right? He said, I just need you to find me these votes, literally plus one of the votes that he needed, to win Georgia, which, he did not. So this election stuff isn't going to go away. It is a weird thing where you just helplessly watch all the headlines, kind of roll in, Republican state after Republican state trying to limit ability to vote, limit days of voting, no early voting, or cutting off absentee ballots and making it much easier to, throw out absentee ballots or challenge them. Now, why does this stuff matter? Well, I mean, we've had multiple elections since November. We had the special election for the Georgia Senate, but there's been others. I have some good news to talk about a little later. But we also in California here, to stay a little local, we have this recall election coming up for Gavin Newsom. But many other like smaller offices are facing recalls, representatives, county supervisors, whatever. Why? Because people are freaking out about COVID restrictions. So you have this coordinated effort on the right to run recall campaigns, but there's more than that too. So check this out. This story was mind-blowing because it has local hit as well. Conservative activists push voter fraud claims to recruit an army to police California recall polls. So they literally want people watching the polls. Guys, I went to the local Republican Central Committee meeting once here in Santa Barbara County for a story I was working on about Republican midterm efforts in 2018 or in 2017 running up to 2018, and they were literally like talking voter fraud, and there's people wearing hats and they're wearing wigs and sunglasses, and they look the same to me. I could tell it's literally just boomers hanging out, staring at polling places, going, all these people look alike. You can guess, who they think looks the same, right? Who we're talking about. But listen this will blow you away. The amount of money just lying around for right-wing groups to I mean, in some cases, they're trying to subjugate democracy, literally here. So listen to this. Conservative activists who have long promoted unproven, often false claims of voter fraud in California are spearheading a major new effort to capitalize on the upcoming gubernatorial recall, attempting to recruit tens of thousands of volunteers to police the polls on Election Day. The effort is the outgrowth of a campaign waged for nearly 3 decades to challenge ballots and voter registrations in California, one often named at immigrants, a Times investigation has found. This is LA Times, not a bad daily paper if you're gonna go with some corporate establishment news, right? The mainstream media. The LA Times is a good outlet, especially for me in California. They help you know a lot of what's going on. In November, volunteers from one of the fraud watch groups, Election Integrity Project. Here it is, Election Integrity Project. That's what they're all about. Caused disruptions at the polls, sometimes intimidated voters, you don't say, according to election logs, emails, and records. An observer in Nevada County raised concerns about the race of a woman seen removing ballots from a drop box outside the county building. According to county records, the woman, who was black, was the county registrar's wife. So one of these people from Election Integrity Project was super upset when they saw a black person collecting votes. What's going on here? In San Diego County, a volunteer poll watcher upset voters by telling them they should surrender their hand-delivered mail-in ballots so they could be canceled and instead vote in person. And in Orange County, an observer attempted to interrupt a couple voting together, and another caused a disturbance for 3 hours by trying to interview voters as they left. Inspector wants her gone, but is unsure of how, the call log noted, under the heading voter intimidation. Here's one local to me. November election incident reports and interviews from 6 counties: Fresno, San Diego, Orange County, Nevada County, Sacramento, and San Luis Obispo. That's the county right to the north of me. I've done a lot of reporting about San Luis Obispo. A bunch of MAGA people were freaking out a few weeks ago about their election integrity. Let's see. For years, there's this institute. What are they called? When you really get into this, there's so much here. There's a political action committees, think tanks. Let's see. I mean, one of the people involved with one of these election integrity groups, listen to this. A former director had his own brush with allegations of election irregularities. Scott Bow, now a GOP campaign consultant, won election to the state assembly in 1995 when Republicans placed one of his longtime friends, a Democrat, on the ballot as a decoy candidate to split the Democratic vote. 4 GOP activists, including the wife of a congressman, pleaded guilty in the scheme. Related criminal charges against Bauer were eventually dropped. So this guy has literally cheated elections. People pled guilty. And he's part of one of these election integrity groups. Let's see. Under Dunsmore's leadership, the Institute adopted more aggressive tactics. In 2018, the organization mailed 652,000 postcards, ostensibly about a gas tax, to voters in targeted areas of 7 counties and sent registrars the names of those whose mail could not be delivered, alleging the voters were not at the official addresses. The Institute also sued Orange County in a failed attempt to force election officials to use jury lists to look for non-citizen voters. A Times analysis shows the postcards in Orange and San Luis Obispo counties focus on zip codes where Republicans face strong challenges, including a congressional seat that wound up being won by a Democrat. A little farther down here, registration records provided by San Luis Obispo County elections officials showed many of the voters flagged as suspicious were members of the military. Others had changed their postal address, not their residence. Quote, if we had inactivated them, they could have been disenfranchised in future elections, said County Registrar Tommy Gong. This is the guy they were calling a communist, the MAGA people, a few weeks ago, who's now leaving the county as the county registrar because he just don't want to deal with this crazy racist shit anymore. They said he had ties to Chinese Communist Party. The man's Asian American, 3rd generation. And so there you go. I mean, take a look at that. They were actively targeting areas where Republicans needed help, and they were trying to get voters disenfranchised here in California. So this stuff is ongoing. It's constantly happening. Some of the other really crazy stuff in this story talks about campaign watchers, right, who were trying to, they're trying to question the validity of mail-in ballots and specifically the signatures on them. Let's see, maybe if I search a keyword, I can find it. Because basically the election officials basically knew, like, oh, like we're never going to get any votes counted if here it is. Election workers are required to check the signature on the outer envelope against those on the file for the voter. Election Integrity Project's volunteer reports and the organization's lawsuits show a pattern of not only watching signature checks but objecting when observers believe signatures don't match and a ballot should be thrown out. California law sets a high burden of proof to those challenging votes because voters are not present to defend themselves. But election officials interviewed by the Times said challenges by Election Integrity Project observers to signatures subjected those ballots to a higher level of scrutiny. They went to court in Ventura County last year for an emergency order that would allow observers to stand close enough to be able to read ballot signatures. A judge refused, deciding that the real intent was not to observe the processing of ballots, but to challenge votes, something he said is not legal. So, this is the thing, like, this is why these things get slapped down so easily in court. It's because they're obvious about it. They make very clear this is what we're trying to do. This is what we want, is to block people from voting. Sometimes I get called a lib by some folks on the left for caring about something like elections, voting, have the ability to vote, people having access to voting. Bernie wanted to make voting day a holiday. It just, to me, it says a lot that the right wants to limit voting as much as possible and has these targeted campaigns to purge voter rolls, to disenfranchise people, to question certain ballots and from certain areas and certain, registered voters. How in the world, if we were to build a mass socialist movement and voting bloc, how would we be able to accomplish anything if we're consistently have the right with its thumb on the scale, pushing, but again, your whole thing could be outside of electoralism. All power and respect to you. But I'm, call me naive, but I'm a little hopeful for a long-term building power socialist movement in the United States. Why? Because we did have some good news out of Buffalo, New York. One of the larger, a good-sized large city in the United States. And let's see, India Walton is the name of the winner in the primary that just happened. She unseated a longtime incumbent Democrat, and she's a socialist. And she's actually head like a nurses union organizer, the head of the nurses union, and really is impressive. And let's just really quick hear from her directly. And this is some of her victory night speechifying. Let's hear some of that.
All that we are doing in this moment is claiming what is rightfully ours. We are the workers. We are the workers. We do the work.
Hell yeah.
And we deserve a government that works with and for us.
Let's hear it again for people in the back.
And we deserve a government that works with and for us.
Now, that kind of thing is music to my ears, okay? And I know a lot of folks think, electoralism is a dead end. Not when I see the things that mayors, city councils, we were just watching a school board meeting from here on the Central Coast earlier, the changes in the power that these local representatives have over the character and the policy set of cities and different municipalities, counties, and how that affects people day to day. I'm really excited to. I mean, and this is the thing. There was a time in the United States when socialism had broader support, that we did have city politicians, city representatives who had these beliefs. And I think if we're going to try to build anything, even approaching how close Bernie Sanders got in 2020. For having anybody who ascribes to any brand of socialism in the White House, in Congress, etc., it's going to have to start from the bottom up. It's going to have to start from the ground up. We're going to need people who, frankly, have the bona fides. Like she said, we're the workers. She's a nurse. I mean, she has, I'm sure, got many people, get many people through COVID. Cori Bush, working class, experienced homelessness. But let's hear. She was asked directly about that. Because keep in mind, when Bernie was asked about socialism, we go, "Well, I'm a democratic socialist. Let me explain and give you lots of pictures about what that actually means." But listen to how she responds to that question: "Are you a socialist?"
Yourself a socialist? Oh, absolutely.
The question was, do you call yourself a socialist? Oh, absolutely. I love it.
Yourself a socialist? Oh, absolutely. The entire intent of this campaign is to draw down power and resources to the ground level and to the hands of the people. And when we think about socialism, we're perfectly fine with socialism for the rich. We will bail out Wall Street and banks and give $1 billion in tax incentives to one of the richest people in the world to build an empty Tesla factory in South Buffalo.
Ooh.
And when it comes to providing the resources that working families need to thrive, socialism becomes scary at that point. So I'm very proud to be a democratic socialist. I am proud to have the support of Buffalo DSA and National DSA. I received a call from Congresswoman AOC this evening, and I'm just excited to be a part of this movement that is ushering progressive politics into Buffalo. Being the third poorest mid-sized city in this country, we should be considering how we begin to eradicate concentrated poverty and disadvantage, and democratic socialist leanings are a big step in getting us there.
So, and, I don't know how many of you remember, Buffalo was the site of where that old man was pushed to the ground by police during BLM resurgence last year, and his head was cracked on the pavement when he started, and he was bleeding from the ears. I covered that. Remember, Trump made up that guy was some kind of Antifa secret agent or whatever, and he was at one of her election night parties, and so he's doing all right, and he's a supporter of hers, so that's pretty cool to see. And when you see things like this, NBC News, the corporate mainstream media, socialist is the first word in a headline, and we're going to have a prominent socialist mayor, woman of color, first woman mayor, likely. I mean, this is a very heavily Democratic city, so it's very likely she's going to win. She has won the primary. We do, of course, the general election is not, that did not happen yet. But she here's a great quote. She said, "I believe we won because we organized. We have a message of care, love, and hope that is resonant with working class Buffalo." So this is the thing, guys. I'm my political kind of project that I ascribe to is a long game. Expand the left and build up our movement slowly but surely, and be smart about it, be strategic about it. And when I see things like this, it absolutely makes me smile and think, okay, this is some good news. This is one for us to hold on to and cherish. Sometimes I feel a little doomer, black-pilled, doom and gloom all the time with all the things that we see going on. So when we see something like that, or somebody as promising as India Walton, we should celebrate her and ally ourselves with her and people like her who are part of this broader movement. Like she said, she wasn't afraid to use the term socialist, but also didn't mind using progressive either, and not getting caught up on the the small differences. Though it's fun for us to do that, we can do that anytime we want. But in the with the broader goal of expanding the left. And making the left more palatable to more people, feeling like it's more welcoming to a working class, and non-college educated cohort out of class interest. I think there's a future for that, and we're seeing it happen in real time.